What's the most awkward situation you've ever been in with a stranger? In the cinema. I interlocked my fingers with the kid sitting beside me for a full minute. Turns out, he wasn't my kid. I tried to release a silent fart near an empty aisle in a supermarket. The fart was not silent. And I wasn't alone. Woke up from a blackout drunk in bed with a woman I had never seen before. I didn't know her name or anything about her. Decided to try and get her name off her driver's license before she woke up. She woke to find me digging through her purse. My son had small Toy Story figurines, but wanted big ones for Christmas. I walked into Toys R Us and asked the male clerk, "Do you have a large Woody?" He turned bright red. I wheeled around and marched out and didn't go back for months. I worked security at an aquatic theme park and was watching Jeopardy in the employee entrance. One of the veterinarians came through and watched it with me for a bit. He said he watches it religiously and he'd passed the test for the show and was hoping to get selected. He'd heard that they like to have a diverse group of contestants and they hadn't had a black guy for a while, so he liked his chances. A few days later, there are 2 black contestants, so when I see him leaving the next time I say, "Hey, did you catch Jeopardy last week?" "No, why?" he responds. "There were 2 black guys on it," I explain. He just stares at me blankly for a few seconds and walks off. That's when I realized it was a different gentleman than I had the previous conversation with. At the airport, I walk up as the elevator door is closing, and there is a woman inside with a stroller. I slowed down because I wasn't in a hurry and would rather catch the next one. Then I saw a little girl about 2 or 3 is playing in a flower pot thing nearby. I realized she was likely meant to be on the elevator with her mom, but the doors are closed by the time I put it together. I walk up to her and said, "Did your mommy get in the elevator?" She just shyly smiles. I sit down with her and decide to wait in place for a few minimums for the mom to realize. A minute or 2 later, a man walks up and says, "Excuse me, can I have child?" in a thick Russian accent. I was trying to decide what to ask to figure out if she was his kid when the elevator door reopened and the woman came flying out yelling for the girl. She hops up happily and runs over to the mom. I stared at guy with an accusing look, then he turned and got in the elevator too. I don't know what the heck was going on there. Was he with them? Did he think I was trying to take their kid? Was he a creeper following them? So awkward. I literally sat silent through the whole weird encounter. My wife and I went out for a drink one night. We walk into the bar. I see someone I know at the bar with their back turned. Walk up behind them and tickled their sides. Turned it I didn't know this person. They just have me a weird look and walked away. Got their spot at the bar though. When I was a teenager, my friends and I would spend the weekend staying up late playing video games and eating junk food. I was also a cross-country runner, and on this particular night I was experiencing some extreme chafing from a long run earlier that day. While we were at the gas station getting Doritos and energy drinks, I announced to who I thought was my friend, "Man, my nipples really hurt." Upon realizing it was a complete stranger with whom I had just shared this intimate detail, I simply stared at him and said, "You're not my friend," and walked away. I didn't go back to that gas station for a long time. Edit, I'm a guy for those wondering. I worked at Old Navy and some lady was looking at men's shirts and she stopped me and held up this shirt and asked if I thought it would fit her son. I looked around and no one else was around. We stood in silence for maybe 30 seconds before she started laughing and said, "Oh, haha, you don't know my son, he lives in Michigan. We were in Washington State. Never mind me, I'm just stoned. Haha." And then she went and bought the shirt. At an art studio in LA, my girlfriend was wearing a denim jacket. As we looked at a piece together, out of the corner of my eye, I saw the jacket and I reach over to grab her butt. A sudden "no" comes from beside me, and a woman 30 years older than me is standing there blushing. I tell her I thought she was someone else and run away to my girlfriend. A few minutes later the lady comes and finds us to talk about young love and how cute we are while making too much eye contact with me. Edit, thanks for the gold, you filthy animals. got on an elevator with a woman and she had on these really nice boots, so I complimented them by saying nice boots. She cups her breasts and says, well, you're not shy, thank you, they're real, and then immediately realized I said booties. She thought I said nice boobs. Longest elevator ride ever. To this day, whenever I say boobs in any context I do so with a very hard deliberate T. Edit. Thanks for all the upvotes everyone. For the record, I did say well those are nice too in my head. I tried to make some moves on a girl when I was in high school. We were in a 7-Eleven near the back, and because of the late hour, I figured we were alone. When she turned me down and left, I decided to drown my sorrows with a bag of Sour Patch Kids and physically ran into the older, bearded man who had been buying nuts. He gave me a sympathetic look and opened his mouth as if to say something, and I panicked. I said, see you tomorrow, and left the store. I still think about this nightly. I was with my mum buying flowers at a florist for a New Year's Eve party. The florist was obviously a very lonely woman and wouldn't stop going on about how she isn't doing anything for New Year's and how it's so nice we have friends to visit, to the point where it became really saddening. My mother obviously really felt for her. Every now and again, maybe twice a year, she has a brain fart and accidentally says what she is thinking. That day was one of those rare days. After paying for the flowers, my mum said thanks. Hope you find a friend soon. I look at her in shock. The woman looks at her in shock, and my mum just gasps, apologizes and literally backs out of the store. God, it was so awkward. I used to do security work at parties. One night there was an alert call for a young woman gone missing. I found her with her dress hitched up looking for her underwear in the bushes. I managed to unlock her phone to call her dad, who from his name I recognized as the district attorney. He comes over to pick up his intoxicated daughter. While I was carrying her to the car, she was making very sexual remarks about me carrying her, all the while her father is hearing me out, like I was responsible for his daughter ending up that way, even suggesting I had raped her. His lecture continued after I put his daughter in the backseat, still making the same remarks while pressing up her body against the car window. When the cops arrived at the scene, she was stark naked, putting her ass out the window. I told the cops my side of the story. As soon as she picked up my name, she started moaning it to the point of waking up nearby neighbors. I was brought to the police station for interrogation. Surveillance footage proved my innocence. 5 years later, I see this district attorney on a weekly basis at my job. Every time I casually talk to a stranger, say bye, then we end up needing to walk the same way for a while. Then you just start running, but you're wearing a backpack, so it's flapping weird and making your gait very uncomfortable. Woman at a gas station didn't know how to put air in her tires, so I helped her because I wanted to put air in my tires and didn't want to wait all day to do it. She called her husband on speakerphone to let him know she found some nice man to help her air her tires. Then I hear him call her an idiot and say that I'm only helping her because I want to F her, and where does she get off talking to other men? She stammered and tried to explain that nothing was going on between us. After she got off the phone, she looked at me as if her husband just caught her F me and got in her car and left. No thank you, no nothing. And for some reason I felt guilty for even helping her out. Jesus, I feel awkward just thinking about it. Not me, but at the gym, my mom was participating in a group workout. The treadmill suddenly started going too fast for her, and she fell off. Luckily, the trainer was walking behind the treadmill. She body slammed into him, and they both fell to the ground. She broke his wrist. She goes to a new gym now. The most awkward moment of my life thus far was with a stranger. I was in Quebec airport going through customs with my family. Because of some recent changes to their system, they didn't have everyone in a line, but instead in a large pen, where they would release 50 people at a time. Chaos. When my family is at the front, they release us and everyone is running forward in a mass trying to get to the kiosks. Next to me is a tall Swedish man trying to get his family a kiosk. He is running forward and waving his arm behind him in a come on motion, clearly frantic. Well, somehow the worlds aligned where his middle and pointed finger went perfectly into my two nose holes. Perfectly, as he then ripped his arm upwards to motion his family forward. My nose was also ripped forward, and I immediately began bleeding everywhere. He looked at me in horror. My family looked at me in frustration as we needed to get to a kiosk. The customs agents looked at me in bewilderment. The language barriers made the situation all the more awkward. It was intensely awkward when I gave a hitchhiker a ride and he started talking graphically about his sexual interests and proclivities. I only gave him a ride because it was pouring rain and he looked like a college student from our university. When he started getting more and more personal, I couldn't wait for him to get out of the car at his destination, something he didn't want to do once we arrived.